Hello, this is the project of our group, and we were tasked to answer a challenging question. Marielle is an 11th STEM student. Her teacher announced that they will be given an exam about the cell structure and function on the next meeting. Marielle is a bit worried because she cannot fully understand the concept by just reading the handouts given to them. So, she decided to compare a cell into a real-life attraction to help her recognize and understand better the concept. If you were Marielle, what real-life attraction can you compare to a cell? Our group decided to compare a cell into a prison cell. So, what really is a cell? A cell is the most basic unit of life. It is found in every living organism and comes from pre-existing cells. As we walk you through this travel brochure, I will show you how the prison is compared to a cell. Our first stop is the nucleus. The nucleus can be thought of as a cell's headquarters, so we compared it to the police room. Just like the cell, the police room acts as the controlling force in the prison cell. The next is cell membrane, or the plasma membrane. To ensure each cell remains separate from its neighbor, it is enveloped in a special membrane known as a plasma membrane or the cell membrane. We compare this into a prison fence with police officers. They both control what goes in and out of the cell or city. They also both protect and support what is inside. The next is cell wall. A cell wall is a structural layer surrounding some types of cell just outside the cell membrane. We compare this into a prison wall. They serve as a tough and rigid walls that separates the inside of the prison from the outside. It provides and defines the structures of the prison. The next is endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum, or ER, processes molecules within the cell and helps transport them to their final destinations. We compare this into the streets or passageways inside. Inside a prison exists passageways and hallways in which, in order to travel or roam around, either as the police or the inmates that get transferred, they go through here. The next is cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is the interior of the cell that surrounds the nucleus and is around 80% water. It includes the organelles and jelly-like fluid called the cytosol. Many of the important reactions that take place in the cell occurs in the cytoplasm. We compare this into the ground. Just like the cell, it also holds the internal components in the place. The buildings and people inside are able to settle and set foot. It also lets free movement inside possible. The next is mitochondria. We all know that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So, we compare this into the massive generator as power supply or solar panels. For the prison to provide electricity, power is generated through the solar panels or massive generators. Through this, light bulbs, alarms, audio systems, and electricity used to charge communication devices remain active and continue to work. The next is cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton can be considered the scaffolding of the cell. It helps it maintain the correct shape. However, unlike regular scaffolding, the cytoskeleton is flexible. It plays a role in cell division and cell motility, the ability of some cells to move, such as sperm cells, for instance. We compare this into steel girders and posts. Like the cytoskeleton in the cell, is the internal framework of the buildings, the structural steel beams, and the support for the buildings. They give a solid foundation to the premises and prevents it from collapsing. The next is lysosomes. Lysosomes contains enzymes that break down large molecules including old parts of the cell and foreign materials. Like any other establishment, trash is inevitable. Street cleaners and garbage men collect them. They work to keep the areas clean. Chromosomes. Chromosomes carry the basic genetic material DNA, which is responsible to provide hereditary characteristics and genetic information to the various cells. A chromosome stores information. A chromosome is like a flash drive, a logbook, or the book of records, specifically for the inmates because they store information. The next is Golgi body or Golgi apparatus. Once molecules have been processed by the ER, they travel to the Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus is sometimes considered the post office of the cell, where items are packaged and labeled. Once materials leave, they may be used within the cell or taken outside of the cell for use elsewhere. We compare this into the prison in the kitchen inside a prison, since by the time food reaches the kitchen, it must be cooked and prepared before served or shipped to the inmates. The next is ribosomes. In the nucleus, DNA is transcribed into RNA, a molecule similar to DNA which carries the same message. Ribosomes reads the RNA and translates it into protein by sticking together amino acids in order defined by the RNA. Ribosomes are small spherical bodies and found in cells that helps or makes keep protein together. A food truck delivers frozen food to the prison every 1 to 2 weeks, holding all the proteins together and keeping the food healthy. Last is the vesicle. The vesicles are small cellular containers that perform a variety of functions. They can be used to move molecules, secrete substances, digest materials, or regulate the pressure in the cell. The vesicles are like prison storage because the purpose of both is to store semi-important objects. And that concludes our travel brochure.
In the past 3 weeks of analyzing and studying cells, we learned how cells function and why it is called the building blocks of life. The purpose of this activity is to understand cells, its parts, and their functions, and allow us to compare it to an intelligible example. There are a lot of interesting real-life situations that can be compared to a cell, but we decided to compare it to a prison cell. So what really is a cell? Cells are the basic building blocks of all living things. In the cell theory, it states that all living organisms are made up of cells that came from pre-existing cells. A single cell has many parts of it with different structures and functions. A prison is a place that has different stations or rooms, such as police room, prison fence, cell wall, passageways, ground, and so on, which function as a whole just like a cell. Comparing the cell to a prison was a good way of letting all of us understand the cell and its structures because we can actually picture how it looks and how it works. Although it may seem dark to compare it to one, it was really one of the things that function exactly like a cell. If one of these parts malfunctions, everything is affected. They function as a one and does not stand alone. In doing this activity, each member of our group is assigned to different tasks. We discussed the content of our brochure and shared ideas about our chosen topic, which is the prison cell. After discussing the contents, we proceeded in doing the layout of our brochure and talk about on how we will present our project.